Hi, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Suzanne Wasik, and I am the proposed new leader of a proposed new district school slated to open in the fall of 2014. I don't know where Xanthi is, but I hope I got that right. And it's pretty crazy to think about. So my best friend, Sarah, always tells me, the way she describes me, is casually intense. She lives in Boston now, which is a whole other story, but she makes frequent trips to New York, and she always says, I can't wait for some casual, intense time. And somehow this idea of being casually intense captures not only who I am, but also my journey in education and the type of leader that I'm growing into. Yes, I have made some strategic choices along the way, choices about where I thought I could grow and learn and have fun. But truthfully, the best decisions I've made came when I stopped talking, stopped analyzing and overanalyzing, and just listened to the voice inside of me. You know the one, we all have it. It's the same voice that told me that I was crazy to wear heels tonight. It's true. But the voice, sometimes surprising, almost always right, has guided the most important decisions I've ever made and led me right here. I want to start by telling you about Charles. And I was hesitant to include this story because I would never want his story to be misconstrued as cliche. But truthfully, my story doesn't exist without his. Charles. Charles, with his small, rough voice, scarred face, and mischievous smile. Boy, did he give me a run for my money during my first year teaching. Precocious, funny, a born leader, and tough as nails. And that was when he was in kindergarten. The following year, as a 7-year-old, he was running the place. I rarely saw him in his classroom. I knew that all the growth that he had made in reading in kindergarten had really gone out the window. I was riding a BX12 bus to school one morning, talking to my roommate and colleague at the time. She also loved Charles. Impossible not to. And we were getting really fired up about it. And on our commute, we had mapped out an entire plan of action. We were going to march into the principal's office and share our proposal because we were not going to let Charles fail. But we never got to share our plan because that same morning, after our ride on the BX12, we learned that Charles had been hit and killed by a city bus while riding his scooter on Fordham Avenue in front of a building where most of my students lived. Who was watching him? Who was there? What could the doctors have done? But the biggest question that still haunts me is, what could I have done? Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, thinking about what I could have done differently to have protected him, I almost turned my back on teaching for good. I had fulfilled my 2-year commitment to TFA and could have moved on to something else, something more predictable, something safer, something a little easier. But whenever I close my eyes and see his smiling face and the ridiculously large SpongeBob watch on his wrist, his most prized possession, I hear that voice inside telling me, you can do this, you must do this. So as I've journeyed from my junkyard view in a co-ed public school, literally, there was a junkyard outside the window, to the crisp hallways of an all-boys charter school in Bed-Stuy, to the 100-year history of an all-girls private school on the Upper East Side, to the first free girls' school in a slum in East Africa and back, the question is always, what would Charles have needed to be successful? And now, I am so honored to try and answer that question as I have the unbelievable, truly, truly unbelievable opportunity through the Office of New Schools to build my own proposed public school. And by the way, this dream came to a head over a Sazerac and a half of ice at a fancy pizza shop in Brooklyn, drinks with Sarah, casual intense. But we go to schools, we teach in schools, we plan lessons, we analyze data, but ultimately the job is about relationships. It's about practicing deep empathy and understanding. And it's about listening to your inner voice and being authentic to who you are. I want to leave you with a quick story about a girl named Melissa, who I taught at the Kibera School for Girls in the Kibera slum in Nairobi. Melissa took feisty to a whole new level and reminds me so much of Charles. So every year, word spreads through the slum, through Kibera, when it's opening day at the school. And hundreds of families gather with their daughters in the hopes that their daughter will be chosen, because there is no public education available, but there are only 60 slots. Melissa was not on the list. And as the doors were closing on that opening day, Melissa, 4 years old, ran from her mother, pushed into the building, sat in these tiny plastic chairs that they have. She wrapped her arms around it, she wrapped her legs, and she refused to leave. The headmistress comes over to her and says, in Swahili, "Melissa, I'm sorry, you need to go back with your mom." Melissa kicked her. So then they bring the founder of the school, who's this burly man. He crouches down to her and this 4-year-old in this tiny chair, says again, "I'm sorry, you're going to need to go with your mom." She kicks him, and he says, "She's a fighter. I like fighters. We're going to make one more spot." So if at 4 years old, Melissa can fight for her education, fight for her life, really, then we can and we must fight for the education of every child, every Charles in New York City.